Our God, the God of the Bible, the God who exists, is a God who loves to begin. So you now let go of yesterday, the old day, its regrets and guilt and sorrow. God can erase all of that. Embrace this day, for this is God's gift to you. Take a deep breath, lift up your heart, and join with me in this wonderful moment as we find the presence of God, the sacred in everything. And what I have for you today is a single word, 2 words if you want. It's a refrain that echoes over and over again in Genesis. We've already seen how God creates the light, and then it says, and the light was good, and that's the first day. And then on the 3rd day, it says that God creates dry land in the waters, and he saw that's good. And he creates vegetation to bring forth each seed that according to its own kind, and he sees that that's good. And then he puts the greater light and the lesser light to govern the night and the day, and he says that's good. He says let the water teem and let the birds swarm, and that's good. Let the land produce living creatures, and that's good. Interestingly, on the 2nd day, it doesn't say that's good. Nobody knows why. Maybe the writer of Genesis is like variation. Maybe it's because there was the sky and water, but there was no vegetation yet to benefit from it. But the word that comes up over and over and over and over again in the book of Genesis is that creation is good. Roger Briggs, a theologian in the United Kingdom, and he says this idea of good has both the notion of function, it works, and also aesthetics, that it is pleasing to the eyes. Pretty good. It's pretty good. John Walton writes a lot about how primarily the Hebrew story of creation and people's concern for creation in that day was not so much how did matter come into existence. That's what we think about a lot. It's how did chaos become functional. So to be good was, it works, it works, it works, it works. That's what they were concerned with. How does it work? He said it's a little bit like on a plane where there's a checklist. This is okay, this is okay. I went riding with a new pilot several years ago. He's a very bright guy. But we're sitting in the plane and it's attached by ropes to hooks in the ground. And I keep thinking, because he's checking off everything on his checklist. Well, it's going to be interesting to see. Do the hooks drop away? Do the ropes fall off? And all of a sudden he looks at the ropes and says, oh my gosh, we're still tied to the ground. And I thought, I want to get out of this plane. Not good. That's, John Walton says, that's each good is, yep, it works, it functions, it functions, it functions. There's beauty to it. Pretty good. Not necessarily perfect. Interestingly, over time, a lot of people have the notion that life as it's described in Genesis 1 is perfect. But the text doesn't say that. And there's little hints to it that say it might not have been. For one thing, there's chaos back then in verse 2. Unformed, unfilled, tohu wabohu. And then there's the great creatures, monsters of the sea. And those probably were thought to be dangerous people. For sure, we know that when God sees the man by himself, he says, it's not good. That part of creation was not good. All of the earth is not yet a garden. That's only Eden. That part is not yet good. That's waiting for people to make it good. The animals are not yet named. The serpent is present even before people sin, before they fall. So the idea is not that everything was perfect then, but it's that there was goodness to it. Now, I think a tractor is going to come by. If you're listening to this, that might be a little bit problematic. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to keep on talking so that you'll be able to hear me. But anyway, that's... I had to stop it, and now we're back. The tractor just got way too loud. But that's to show this is about as perfect a place as you can imagine, but it's not perfectly perfect. And that world in Genesis 1 was good. And part of the point of that is this world, even though now we live in a fallen world, is a world that we are to embrace. And a world that, as God made it, was good. Now, science cannot tell us this. Science can tell us a lot about how things work. But Albert Camus, one of the great thinkers of the 20th century, said the ultimate philosophical question is life worth living? William James, the great psychologist, struggled with this because he was very depressed and he wondered if it was or not. Science cannot answer that question. It's just matter what form it takes. Science is neutral about, but Genesis is not neutral. It is good. And that means that your life is a good thing and worth living. So your word for today is good. I have been reading a book by a philosopher, Clancy Martin, called How Not to Kill Yourself. He is a brilliant thinker, writer, academician who struggles deeply with depression and has attempted suicide many times. And so this book is gut-wrenchingly personal and thoughtful. And I want to say a word to everybody today. The word for today is good. Existence is good. It is very good that there is such a thing as life. It is very good that there are human beings. That's not neutral. We know. You know better. Even with the pain and suffering in our midst. But he writes about his own struggle to believe that life can be good. And he says, simply telling people that they ought to be alive, giving people rules, does not enable them to live. The great 20th century philosopher and theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who died in a Nazi concentration camp, wrote about suicide. A man who is on the brink of suicide no longer has ears for commands or prohibitions. A man who is desperate cannot be saved by a law that appeals to his own strengths. Such a law will only drive him to even more hopeless despair. A man who can no longer live is not helped by any command that he should live, but only by a new spirit. And then he writes this. Now listen to these words. One day, when I was in the grip of that worst episode of depression, some months after quitting drinking, I was walking home from the university. My depression had been getting worse each day. Now it was so bad I could no longer talk to anyone about it. My friend's complete inability to understand what I was suffering made it even worse. It was not only the worst pain I'd ever suffered in my life, it was an entirely different order than any previous pain. I couldn't breathe. There was nothing I could do. Clearly, my only escape was to kill myself, but I could not even muster the strength to do that. Then, passing that way, I realized I could no longer walk. I could not move my feet. I stood there not knowing what to do next. It sounds dramatic, I know, but it was true. I was in too much mental pain to move. Then I prayed. I said, I don't know if there's anything there. Dad, I don't know if you're out there. This is 10 years after his father had died. God, if you are out there, now is the time. If anyone can help me, anyone, now is the time. I'll do anything. Help me. Please help me. I would have fallen to my knees, he writes, but I could not kneel. I couldn't even cry. In that moment, I was beyond all of that. And then, from who knows where, the clouds inside me parted, and the sun appeared. It was not much sun, just a few beams of sunlight. But suddenly I could walk again, and I started to cry. And that was the real beginning of my recovery, which continues today. My word for you today comes from the earliest words of the oldest and best book, good. Light is good. Earth is good. Sun is good. Life is good. Filled with pain, I know. I was reading this week that now young teenage girls in the most recent study, 30% of them have serious considerations of suicide, up from 19% just a few years ago. It is heartbreaking and heart aching. But I want to say to you today, the word is good. It is very good that you're alive. You are loved by God. So today, say good. Anytime you're able to name something that is good, when God gets to the climax of creation, after he makes human beings, somebody like you in his image, it's not just good, it's very good. Food is good. Anytime you see something that works, for your body to work, that is good. If you have a place to live, that is good. That tree, that sunlight, this breath, this thought. Do not lose hope. There is meaning and glory in it all. Life is good. End of teaching. Beginning of your day with God.
Thanks for joining us. My name is Tim. I'm a part of the team here at Become New. If you'd like to receive the emails that go along with each video, you can let us know at becomenew.com/subscribe. Or if you'd like to receive a text alert whenever we release a new video, you can text the word BECOME to the number 855-888-0444. If you have a prayer request, please let us know. You can text that request to that same number, 855-888-0444. There's a group of us who meet every day to pray over those requests. So we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.